I'll be back with the whole fire department.
Get off my plane.
One of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
Well, at least he didn't get shot in this one. I seem to usually have, like, people are getting shot, but he died, so.
A much gentler death we open this episode of the Cinemaniacs with. I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs,
as I just said.
Yes.
So, we have a little more time to breathe this week.
So I'll show you how to tie shoes, and I don't know.
I'll show you how to tie chi. It's something like
Ba-dum-bum.
this. So, I did see a film in the theater this weekend.
Bonus moment.
That we will be talking about.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us all about it then?
Okay, since it's the only one I saw in the theater this weekend. So, here we have Tom Cruise in a mostly true story based on true events, shall we say, of a man who was a TWA pilot in the 70s who became a secret pilot for the CIA and the drug cartels and the US government and the Contras and probably a few handful of other things, some in there. And it is a story just like apple pie that is American-made.
Showtime treat to equal the crisp, delicious flavor of hot popcorn that's bathed in real melted butter.
If he wanted money, he should go into cable access movie reviewing.
Oh, because let me
We
tell
make
you,
so much more.
we're knee-deep in it here. That's why the camera just
We're
below
knee-deep in
frame-
something here, that's for sure.
Oh boy, yeah, there's something thick, thick on the floor, and it certainly ain't cash. And it's about to flow right now. So this film, I did a little research. There's a website I enjoy called History versus Hollywood, where everything that's a biopic or based on a true story, it just breaks it down as to how close the film is to reality. So this film, I would accentuate the word based on true events. There was a guy by this name who was a pilot who worked for various entities, but not as it's portrayed in the film. It's portrayed in the film in such a way to be much more entertaining and wacky and crazy and seat of your pants. Having said that, it's not really a comedy. I mean, it's
No,
light
it sure isn't.
at times. There are funny moments. Most of this is just this guy who finds himself trying to please multiple masters without each master knowing what he's doing, also that he can enrich himself. He's a somewhat likable character in this film. I think you cast Tom Cruise because generally you want somebody to be likable. And according to facts, apparently the guy was a very nice guy. Like even after he would screw somebody over, and in real life, they'd be like, I still kind of liked him, though.
I kind of like the guy.
So what you have is this guy, and this takes place from, I think, 1978 to about 86.
Yeah, felt like
chronologically, more or less. And you see how this guy gets in deeper and deeper with these various people who don't know he's working with each other and who really would not like to know that they're working with each other. And how does he keep spinning all these plates and keep himself alive and keep just an incredibly voluminous amount of cash
that was
somewhere.
What was most mind-boggling
That
to
was
me.
one of the most amusing parts of the
Wow.
film. You have these scenes where every inch of his house is filled with cash. At one point, I don't want to give away a joke, but there's an amusing moment with some cash. He goes to bury more cash in the backyard, and his shovel hits a bag he's already buried.
Well, and he's also got it in like 6 local banks.
In 6 banks.
It's just unbelievable.
The bank opens, they give the main vault to him because it's all his
Yeah.
cash. And nobody bats an eye. And again, elements of this are true. So, is it worth going to see? I thought it was okay. I saw it Sunday night at 6 p.m. This is what I would call a decent matinee,
Okay.
even though that's not when I saw it. It's nothing I'm going to remember. By the time this hits video, I may struggle to remember the details of this film. This is not going to be remembered in a year. I think Blow is a similar arc of a story that is much better done.
Right.
Like if you want the American gets wrapped up in the cocaine world movie and learns his lesson, Blow is probably a better one. What's a much better one than this, I think. This is directed by Doug Liman, who initially gave us Swingers and a movie called Go and the first Bourne film. You said Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I never saw. This is similar to Go in some respects in that it's all over the place stylistically. Like sometimes it looks like it's shot on a phone, and sometimes it's VHS camcorder footage, and it's very zippy, and it's cutting around. It's trying to be really fast-paced and wacky. And at times I wished it would just calm down a little bit. Like it didn't feel. This movie's about 5 minutes shy of 2 hours, and I never felt the length at all. It never felt like it was dragging.
I'll agree.
There were sections where lesser films could have spent too much time on something, but it never does that. And it's really. Ultimately, I don't want to give anything away, but it is structurally a classic crime does not pay movie. You want to take the shortcut and get rich and at the expense of a lot of other lives, which this guy, he's not a good guy, by the way. With what he's doing, and I'm watching this too, and I'm like, are we supposed to like this guy? Because what he's doing is a very bad thing and causes a lot of harm to a lot of people in the end. So ultimately, it was a passable watch. I think I could enjoy it for the hijinks and the ridiculousness with the cash.
Right.
And that sense of, at one point, this is not going to end well for some of all the people in the film. So again, nothing too memorable to me, but if you want to throw a little money at a local theater, this is a way to do it.
I was struck with pretty much the same feeling that I was disappointed in that I didn't either enjoy it more or, not that I go to Tom Cruise movies to get a big moral message, but I just kind of felt like I'm watching the whole thing, and then at the end it was like, okay, I guess that happened. I did enjoy the hijinks and everything like that, and the comedic moments with all of the some unbelievable stuff with all of the cash that he's got. Like you said, he's burying it. He doesn't have enough room in his backyard to dig a new hole and there's actually a scene that does that. He digs and digs. Oh, there's money there. I got to move someplace else. Just unbelievable with that. I was struck with, and they didn't dwell on this at all. You kind of wonder how much is enough. When he's got baskets and baskets full of it and everything like that. Don't you stop? But then I thought back to one of my favorite films, and this doesn't break your rule of referencing a better movie. But I thought of the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, where they're digging for gold and they just keep going and going and going. And I think there must be that.
For this character, part of the problem was.
He's got other things.
If he stopped, he might not go on.
Right, exactly.
Very
there are forces which might not appreciate.
Once he said yes to doing anything, which was kind of with a gun to his head, there was really not a whole lot of no that was going to be had.
That's very true. So there's fun moments with his wife, who has a different take on everything. Overall, I think you're exactly right. For me, this would probably be an very enjoyable video when it comes out. Do I recommend that people go out and see it in theaters? When it's $10 even to see the matinee? Probably not, unless you're a diehard Cruise fan or you're a big fan of those films, like you say, Blow, much better film. I thought American Made was okay, but not necessarily what I was expecting.
So not necessarily DOA.
No, not exactly. As he works on these in the week before, he knows what's coming up. But we have a story about a group of med students. You may have heard this before, but a group of med students who are curious about the afterlife, one in particular, for various reasons of her own. And so they go on an experiment. They medically induce, let's face it, death, and then they try to bring themselves back and just kind of see what happens. Strangely enough, as they're all inducing themselves in death, you could call them Flatliners.
I realize.
We're all yelling around here.
So. They didn't hear a thing of that.
No, they didn't. That's what benefit of being at home. And unfortunately, they have to watch us. So I did actually get out to see this. You might remember a similar film. Decades ago?
What was that film called?
That film was called Flatliners, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that one. I remember.
Yeah, that one, okay. With Kiefer Sutherland and Julia Roberts and a huge cast at the time. So I'm going into this thinking, why are we remaking this? That wasn't that memorable a movie. I think I
remember liking it.
Yeah, I liked the first one quite a bit.
Yeah.
But do I need to see it remade? Are kids today, dying to see something? I went into this thinking, okay, the effects have got to be like super great, and we spent a lot of time in there. No, the effects are interesting. The only real thing that I found that was different about this was, and I found this completely improperly placed, there's a moral to it. This isn't giving anything away to people who saw the original or going to see this one. What happens, as it did in the original movie, was when you die, you have experiences, you come back, and in the original, bad things came to get you. It was like, oh, you're dead, but now you're alive. We're coming to get you because you're supposed to be dead. As it turns out, the reason these kids, these students, have these experiences is apparently because they did something bad to somebody in their lives and they haven't apologized for it, and so they feel guilty. So this is some like Roman Catholic movie. I'm a Catholic, okay, so don't get down on
Flatliners
me.
2, The Apologies.
Right, exactly. And so it was that, and there was one other thing, I forget what I was going to say that sort of was different. There's not necessarily a surprise if you're up on your rumors cameo. That's sort of fun. Questionable as to whether or not the actor or actress is the same character. I don't quite remember it well enough. So that was sort of fun. But in the long run, this is pretty much just a flatliner out remake of the original that I didn't see why it needed to be made.
As always, I have 2 reasons why this needed to be made.
Well, exactly, yeah.
But yeah, this is like, I don't think this has any cultural resonance anymore. Like,
Yeah.
if you were young at a certain period, you probably remember this, or if you saw it in the theater. It did occur to me that I'm now old enough to have seen an original film and its remake in the same theater 20-something years apart, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm sure it is intended for teens who have never heard of the original, so
Right.
remake stigma is not there, and adults maybe who want to see. I mean, honestly, I'm a little curious to see what another take on the movie is like, but it's been like 20 years since I've seen the original, so I couldn't even tell you other
Right.
than the basic premise of
Oh,
it.
really? Because I was pretty much, I wouldn't say I'm a diehard fan of the original,
Yeah.
but I remembered it really well. I've seen it many times. So maybe I went into this knowing and comparing too much to the original. But I think it's fair to do that. If it's something as a clear remake, the point, I think, of an analysis would be compare and contrast.
So you'd say you've made a vow that probably you wouldn't see another sequel to Flatliners.
Exactly, and they have these kids have a connection.
They do.
That they're probably never going to lose.
Could I take a shot at this?
Go for
Okay.
it. I tried to give you a little
No,
segue
thank
that
you,
you built
thank you.
already.
Here's a film. I have no idea what it's about, but I'm going to wing it. Let's try this together, shall we? A young married couple seems to think that everything in the world is as much and blissful as it could possibly be with a love that dares not speak its name and takes 2 to tango, especially when you find out till death do us part.
Snack bar, where we offer a wide variety of good things to eat and drink to top off your evening.
Looks funny, interesting. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. So we'd like to thank our friends at the Latches Theater in Brattleboro, Vermont,
Indeed.
for sponsoring this fine program, fine in quotes, like my hair. And we would highly encourage anybody who likes to see movies to exercise their free will and go to the theater of their choice. If I'm in Brattleboro,
Yes.
the theater of my choice is the Latches.
Indeed, that's
Funny
where
how
I'd
that
go.
works out, isn't it? We won't mention it's the only theater in Brattleboro. Just because that's just a
course
fact. Now we move on to that which you may view on the home video platform, device, service, or thingy of your choice.
Don't view it on your phone.
Come on. I use words that start with F when I talk about viewing anything on your phone.
Foolhardy?
Foolhardy.
That must
it
be
is
it.
Fortunately. First up, since the camera's on me, I'm going to
Yes.
go again because I'm a hog. Thank you. The latest in Michael Bay's seemingly endless string of films about toys that turn into other toys, we have Sir Anthony Hopkins dragged into this morass. And just because it's got the word ass at the end, they're back and tussling on the world stage through space and time. And finally, despite the title, if this makes money, it's not going to be as finite as this sounds, Transformers: The Last Night.
Really?
I don't know,
That was
you know?
like an intro that I made because it's got violence. in
There's,
it.
I like to
Really?
remind folks, people watch a show and you refer to us as a critic, which I'm a guy who watches movies and
Right.
blabs about them on TV. I am in no way a film snob, but this stuff is just stupid.
Yeah, come on.
I
How
mean,
many do we need?
And again, the stuff I watched all weekend, the average person would be considered a film snob in their reaction to what I saw. This is just, it's silly. I can't take it seriously, and it's all this heavy-handed, they're hard to look at because it's a million moving parts.
Right.
I don't care about these dumb characters, whatever Bumblebee and Fumblebee and Skiddly Dee and Fip Fap and all that tollywaddle. I don't care. This thing opens in Arthurian times where they try to say Merlin was working with the Transformers.
Yeah.
That's kind of
It's
funny,
just
at least,
mind-boggling,
in how
though.
ridiculous it is. And it was, what's his
ridiculous.
name, who played Merlin in the film from...
I don't remember.
Oh, shucks, he was in Big Night.
Don't know.
Well, it's an actor you'll recognize if you look beneath the fake beard. Anyway, it's just a lot of carnage and buildings toppling and Anthony Hopkins being dragged into something.
Yeah.
And I barely remember this movie. I remember that it being kind of a mess and that there are these uncomfortably sexy looking camera setups pointing at like a 13 or 12-year-old girl,
Yes.
which I'm like, this is a little untoward. So if you like the Transformers movies, I'm going to assume you'd like this because to me it's more of the same. I don't know. I'm not qualified. I've watched the majority of them in the theater and I'm waiting for one to impress me, but they have yet to do so.
I guess I can say I like the first couple, but how many do we need? It's more of the same stuff. So yeah, if you're a fan of the Transformers, maybe you're going to like this again. It takes a lot to make me do this, but both my younger son and I went to see this, and after a few shots of this this young 12, 13-year-old girl who's living on her own and she's tough, after a few ogling shots of this, which is just weird, and then a scene we meet Mark Wahlberg in some diner or something like that, and it was, I forget what exactly it was, but he like had a little transformer in his pocket or in his underwear or something. He pulled it out and threw it down. I looked over at my son and I said, shall we leave? Our life, my time is more important, and I walked out of it. It's been a long time since I walked out of a movie. This was just far too stupid.
Let's just not talk about this film anymore,
Okay.
shall we? This is the last time we have to talk about this Transformers
We
film.
can only hope. But I'd like to talk about.
Would you now?
I'm a big fan of scuba diving. I love scuba diving. I enjoy films like Open Water, where bad things happen because they don't happen to me. Strangely enough, some bad things that did happen to these young women and didn't happen to me, where a couple of young ladies go out scuba diving in their shark cage, always a good thing to do if they're a man or, as is the case, woman eating sharks. And trouble is, they end up on the bottom of the ocean. It's not terribly far, but sharks are around and they have to fight their way out. It's not so deep that they run out of air immediately, but they are 47 meters down.
To see new mini red scuba is the one that's baked with real craft cheese.
So I don't know what happened there, but I guess with all the subtitles and everything like that, kind of odd. But we've been talking about this for the better part of a year, I think,
least.
strangely enough.
We've had a long and interesting relationship with this film.
Right, exactly. I'll let you explain why.
Well, originally we were given this film as a DVD, straight to DVD review. It was titled In the Deep. I think probably maybe to play off the
Possibly
title
The
In the
Deep,
Shallows, which was in theaters at that time, which is a movie I liked.
Or The Deep.
Or The Deep. This film has, if you look it up, this has an interesting release history that I don't recall all the details of, so I don't want to get it wrong. But it was going to go straight to video, and then they decided, wait, we can put this in theaters. And it was ripped from our clutches. So I actually have a DVD copy of this film under its original title when it was like a week or two away from hitting store shelves.
Yep.
So then it was put in theaters and converted to 3D, I believe, too.
You're right.
And they had really cool lobby displays where it was a giant
Right, you
shark
could get
mouth that
behind.
you could stand behind. I really like this movie a lot.
Yeah.
I think this is just a solid suspense movie. They play up the shark angle a lot. It's not really a shark movie. A shark is one of the many ways these girls are totally screwed underwater. Basically, the idea is they've had a fun night on vacation in Mexico and they meet some guys and they say, hey, want to go out in our boat and go down in a shark cage? Sure, why not? What a fantastic idea with people you don't know. So they're most of the way down. I don't know if they're coming back up or if they're on the way down, but the cable snaps and the shark cage drops to the ocean floor. They have some small semblance of survival materials. I think they're in scuba gear at the time. And it's just a survival tale. It's how do we get out of this cage that is jammed shut on the bottom of the ocean floor with a limited amount of air between the two of us and a shark in the water. So the shark is just like a thing. It's not all that it's about. I thought it was incredibly suspenseful. It is an edge of your seat, shout out, terse little profanities while you watch it because you're like, oh, I really enjoyed it a lot. So it would make a great double feature with in the shallows
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it is, you know, how to deal with a shark when you're not in not much water and how to deal with in a shark when you're in too much water. Mandy Moore, I think, is the only recognizable star in this film. There's only like
There's only 4 or 5 people in it,
movie.
yeah.
But I think this is well worth seeking out. This is a good tension-filled night on the couch.
I agree completely. It was really well shot. Performances throughout are really solid. I'm a scuba diver, and so so divers will enjoy just watching this, even though, you know, it puts you into some scary peril. But the thing I like most about this, and the average person either wouldn't care about this or wouldn't necessarily ring true, but so we're down there, and this is true of any film. I think you go to see a movie to see characters in peril, and you put yourself in their position. So my younger son and I were watching this. Walter keeps coming up because basically he watches everything I watch. But he and I are both divers, and we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, boy, if I were down there, I'd do this. And then 5 minutes later, the girls do that. And so it's really smart in all ways. Whoever made this clearly knows diving. It was really well shot. I, too, thought this was really fine and enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to, again, I'm recalling it from our video viewing, but I also saw it again in theaters.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing it again on video. I thought it was really solid.
Speaking of peril, and speaking of rewatching or replaying things,
Yes.
let me once again introduce a film that I haven't seen. Here we have the story of a man whose day repeats over and over again. At the same time, he's living the same life, filled with peril and terror and horror, and how will he ever get beyond the day, time, and hour and minute of 2:22. Hi.
And we're back.
Talking technical mumbo jumbo.
It looks well shot. I haven't seen this either. I was going to watch it last night, but I watched something else. I forget what it was. Looks well shot. I enjoy films of this ilk. We were talking about another one that's we may be talking about next week when it comes up, about, you know, time travel and repeating events and things like that. So again, 2:22. It's out and available on video if it seems to be what you like.
So, we have one more film to talk about.
We do.
Officially, and we have 24 minutes to talk about it. So I'm not going to rush into an intro for this. I mean, why would I? This is a film that is now, do you want to introduce this or shall I?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
You were able to get it for us, so you should have the honor.
I'm the purloiner.
We don't need to see your purloins either right now, so.
yeah. It goes dark and low.
Are that cat thighs, pussycat thighs, purloins? Sorry.
I should introduce this before
we've got
this
this much
goes
time.
into 10 p.m. territory, folks. So this is a film that is now available on Netflix. And most people have Netflix. I don't, but most people do. And it is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel from the 90s that I remember when it was on bookshelves and I've always wanted to read. Stars Carla Gugino as a woman trapped, quite literally, by her husband's predilections when dark things arise as a result of Gerald's game.
Not one of my favorite. I mean, when we talk about King, and I'm a huge King fan, when you talk about my favorite ones, this doesn't jump to the forefront. But terrific performers. I mean, they're fine actors.
This is a very small cast. I've never read the book. I was always curious about reading the book, and I think this film. While I was watching the film, I thought I was seeing how the filmmakers were taking things that work on the written page but might not work in a film and turn that into something slightly different so that it would work visually. Because I believe the book is a lot of internal monologue and somebody thinking about something. Basically, the scenario of the film is that Gugino and Bruce Greenwood go off to a secluded getaway for a little hanky-panky.
Secluded being an operative word.
Secluded, like nobody's anywhere around. And that's a real great thing for what they wanted to do.
Yes.
Turns out to be a real bad thing for how things worked out. So she's handcuffed to a bed, and he drops dead of a heart attack, and she's completely alone. And it will be days before anybody comes by, if they do at all. And then there are external factors that might work to make her time even less pleasant. So it's a survival tale, and then you get into the background of how they got to that point and what makes up her psyche and some scars she has from her past that sort of work to help maybe get her out of it, or maybe make her die a really terrible and lingering death. Cast is very minimal. It's Bruce Greenwood, it's Carla Gugino. There's the flashback sequences where you see her as a child and her father, played by E.T.'s Henry Thomas.
Okay.
Little Elliot's all grows up, and a dog. And the dog is, yeah. So it is edge of your seat, nail biting at times, because you are totally in this space with her. You rarely leave this room.
Netflix has become a strange force in solid film production and television show making. They make a whole list of series that are really top of the line, and this really looked like it as well.
It's really well made. I mean, it's the director of a few things, including Oculus, which I thought was a really good, creepy movie. Very well executed with editing, and there's some good editing and going back and forth in time and perspective in this. And there's a moment of gore that is so, it had me like, I felt like tingly. Maybe I might have been having a cardiac arrest, I'm not sure. Because it's so realistic looking and so horrifying, and you're so with her on this journey the whole time, so that when something bad happens to her, it's like you're feeling it too, because you just feel like you're in this position. It is, I could see why it didn't go theatrical. There's no, again, unfortunately, marquee name in this. And it's a very small story. Again, not having read the book, I'm just treating this as a movie. I thought it went on maybe about 15 minutes too long. Okay. Like, the story kind of resolves itself, and then it keeps going. And that extra bit resolves some loose ends with her character, but I felt they weren't necessary. Okay. And that kind of ties to a subplot that I thought seemed a little silly. Like, Stephen King's books, I've read a number over the years. His stuff is very readable. Your eyes just fly through that stuff. It's just the way he uses language is great. But there are things that annoy me about Stephen King, like the made-up swear words and the silly names for the bad guys and certain things. There's one of those things in here that I thought, oh, if you didn't do that, this would have been it's a little cheesy. But it's also, this element of this scary thing is legitimately creepy. Okay. Like, the way it's shot is subtle, and I was like, yeah, this is really creepy. So I really thought Gerald's Game was quite good. I would highly recommend it for fans of Stephen King stuff, or just somebody who likes somebody being totally hosed in a situation movies. And that's
we got a couple of those.
Yeah.
This is our Women Being Hosed week, apparently. I guess.
It's 47 meters down.
Gerald's Game.
This is going to sound terrible. That's Screwed in a Shark Cage. Yep. And Gerald's Game is Screwed in a Bed. So there's that. Netflix available now.
Yes.
So that's all that we officially saw this weekend.
Indeed.
I will not bore anybody with tales of my weekend. I could. I have 17 minutes.
Well, you saw lots of movies and things. I didn't even do that, so mine would be even more boring.
7 movies in the theater, one of which I talked about tonight. But we'll let them get back to their evening. Next week, I believe we will have to discuss the new Blade Runner.
Indeed.
That's
about all I'm interested in discussing, to tell you the truth.
Or more importantly, the world has been waiting decades, shall we say? My Little Pony, the movie.
Indeed.
I might not have time for that if that comes out locally. So I guess until then, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.